Hello, right now I'm making a video about how my dad, the greedy farmer, has only one talking point left. So first, before we get to that talking point, obviously that talking point is going to be, oh, he lived with me, that's why he wasn't committing any crimes or this or that, when in fact that's not true. Facts and evidences are going to show that I have literally never lived with my dad, the greedy farmer, not even in the same country, never talked to him on the phone, making it impossible for a person whom I never lived with, not even in the same country, never talked to on the phone, to have had any influence on my life or environment whatsoever. But first, before we get to that, we have to first look at the fact that in a court of law, facts and evidences are looked at, not people's opinions and how it would have been or how it could have been or how it should have been. Okay, facts and evidences are all there since I was watched, since I was an 11-year-old child. Not only that, when I went overseas, every single thing was witnessed by law enforcement, and also how much time my dad, the greedy framer, even spent out overseas, and how much of that money my mother paid. Everything is in the records, okay? Nothing is hidden, so there's no room for argument. Okay, first of all. The second thing I have to say is, if a person has never lived in the same country as me, never even spoke to me on the phone, it's literally impossible for that person to have had any effect on my life or environment whatsoever. But before we get to that, let's get to how my dad, the greedy framer, got to this talking point in the first place. So basically, the entire year of 2025, I ignored my dad, the greedy framer. Before June 28th, he tried to run after me. I knew after he tried to get too close that obviously he knew about the brain savant money and that this was exactly what he was running after. So I started ignoring his phone call, considering the fact that I only talked to him about once every 3 years, and he was trying to be too nice. So basically, yeah, I've only met him about 3 times my entire life, and yeah, nothing more than that. One of those 3 times was in 2011. The other time was in 2023, where, yeah, and 2011 and 2023, and maybe once or so that he went over overseas when I was there. That's about it. Only about 3 or 4 times my entire life. So a person who's calling me every single day in 2025 obviously knew about the brain savant money. And if you don't believe me, then we have numerous amounts of evidence of this for anyone's common sense to dictate to them that this man, my dad, the greedy framer, is obviously obsessed with money, and which is exactly why he's trying to run after me so aggressively and greedily. First of all, obviously, he ran after me all year 2025. I ignored him, knowing that he was only running after the money. He's a very rude man. Basically, he's a very psychotic, rude individual. He only cares about himself, and he thinks he's really cunning and slick, and that he would get away with what he wants to do against people or towards people. And he thought that he would be able to play this very nice man to me to try to be really slick around me in 2025 and get me to go to his house and leave my mother. Every single phone conversation that I picked up in 2025, he's always trying to beg me to go to his house one way or another. Whereas in 2022, one of the only 3 times I've ever talked to him, he was really reluctant on letting me go to his house. He was keep on yelling and screaming, saying, no, I said it this time, that time, blah, 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 this and that. And basically people had to call him in 2022 and say to his face, once you've said that you could let him go to your house, you have to let him go to your house now. You have to let him go to your house now, which is why he let me go to his house in 2022 after people literally told him that once you said you're going to let him go to your house, you have to let him go to your house. Whereas in 2025, he's calling me every single day, begging me to go to his house every single day. And I knew for a fact he knew about the brain savant money. He thought he was really slick and he could get me away from my mother to try to sweet talk me and get that money to himself. We know this for a fact since I started ignoring him right away in 2025, before June 28, 2025, and he thought he was being really slick and smart. So what he does is he tries to tell me, basically blackmails me through law enforcement, through his ads and ads for his sisters with the Disney or the Hershey ad for his other sister. basically telling me that he's working with law enforcement to narrate in the trial against me. I couldn't care less. He wasn't gonna beg the son of the mother whom he used to beat when I was a 5-year-old child, literally every single day. And if you look at the conversation with my mother with me from Russia, you will know exactly how aggressive this man is. Literally has a psychotic mind, like a serial killer. He thinks he's really slick and he could convince me to go to his house really easily. It wasn't so in 2025, and I started ignoring his phone call, at which time he got the message really quickly that I knew he knew about my brain savant monetary potential, and he was only running after that, which is why he was calling me every other day and begging me to go to his house out of greed and selfishness, despite knowing my mother needed me. So basically, yeah. 2025, he wasn't going to beg me to go to his house after I literally blocked his number, because he had realized that he's not going to call from other people's numbers to basically beg me to go to his house, obviously. And so basically what he started doing first was he tried to get revenge from me by calling people like Ms. Deb and trying to convince her that that she shouldn't give me her daughter, even though Miss Deb was basically advertising Ashley on my YouTube all day, night long, from morning till night. It was Ashley's Furniture, Ashley's Furniture, Ashley's Furniture, and Ashley's Furniture all day, night long, from morning till night. It was just Miss Deb's daughter's advertisement on my TV all day, night long. So basically, my dad, the greedy framer, first what he does is he tries to get revenge by calling Miss Deb and telling her to not give me her daughter for basically realizing that I wasn't willing to share any of my brain savant money with him, and he wanted to get revenge from me, so I would end up unblocking his number and calling him and making some sort of a deal that he wanted. I couldn't care less. I knew Miss Deb wasn't going to let go. She had inside info from law enforcement. Miss Deb was the only person in the U.S. who was told about my brain savant in September 2022. August 9, 2022, a month after August 9, 2022, like the 21-day test result that come out for a brain savant test, Miss Deb was the only person in the U.S. told about it at that early. Everyone else was told 8 months late. Miss Deb was the only person told about it at that time. 21 days later. So I knew that he was just wasting his time. When I used to make my videos and Miss Deb was arguing against me very enviously recently, I said in my video before June, or I think it was like around May, end of May, early June, before she even tried it, I said in my video that if Miss Deb found out that my brain savant was getting freed, she'd try to force me to marry her daughter. It just slipped out of my mouth. I knew it was true. And I would go to the grocery store and people would laugh at me, and I'd get embarrassed and I'd just look down because they were laughing at me. But I knew inside that what I said was true. And Miss Deb would, in fact, try to force me to marry her daughter if she could. I knew her daughter was married, but there's also a lot of money involved, and Miss Deb knows all about it. So basically, yeah. So when at the end of June, Miss Deb started advertising her daughter Ashley to me, I started going back to the grocery store just to like look at them back, like, I'm sorry, you were saying something, sir? You were saying something? I didn't get that, because she started advertising her daughter to me, and who was married and is married, and she's still advertising her daughter to me. So yeah, like, there's a story behind the story. You don't know anything about it, so don't try to act like you do. And they didn't, like, I would go to the grocery store with my mother, and they would just drug me so much I could not go inside the door. The reason wasn't because Miss Deb was advertising her daughter. The reason was because people like Junaid were getting rejected by these girls who were trying to call the cops on them, police on them, threatening to do so. And my elementary school teacher even did. So all these people like Junaid were only running after due to extreme envy. They didn't even know them. And so, yeah, basically, in 2025, when I started ignoring my dad, the greedy framer, he started to first get revenge by calling Miss Deb and telling her all day and night long to not give me her daughter. And being as greedy as he is, after finding out details on my brain savant, he was advertising his wife's niece to me all day and night long through this Bentley ad. Yeah. So basically, he's advertising someone to me, and he doesn't want Miss Deb to advertise her daughter to me. So basically, it doesn't make any sense what he's doing. What ends up happening is, and by the way, he knew all about it because he would tell law enforcement, he'd be like, does he like brown girls? Is he interested in brown girls? Because I've got a brown girl, and a law enforcement would basically put an American Girl on my TV home screen to let me know that basically, yeah, like this man, like, try to make fun of me that I'm not into brown girls. Well, and yeah, whatever. But the reason was because obviously he was the one who wanted it, and he was on the phone with them, keep on asking them if I was willing to marry someone who even remotely looked like her, even though she didn't. But that's what he was trying to do at that time. So basically, even when he was trying to tell Miss Deb to not let me marry her daughter, he was greedily trying to find other ways of trying to get to me by trying to advertise his own wife's niece to me. Yeah, who doesn't look anything like that, by the way, but that's what he was trying to do. Basically, yeah. So basically, he was playing two games at one time. He's telling Miss Deb that the Brain Savant money doesn't exist. I'm not worth anyone trying to get me to marry their daughters. And at the same time, he was trying to advertise his wife's niece to me all day, night long. Miss Deb got the info pretty quickly, and Miss Deb told him straight out, it's not appropriate for someone who's a married man with a 5-foot-long beard to be calling me, who's a married woman, all day, night long. I think you should stop. So that's when he basically stopped doing so, because she's not stupid. He himself, by the way, my dad, the greedy framer, not just his wife, my dad, the greedy framer, would be asking law enforcement if I was interested in marrying a brown girl or not, while he's calling Miss Deb all day, night long, telling her not to give me her daughter. Yeah. Two different games, the same guy's playing like always. He's going after greed at the same time, and he wants revenge from me by telling Miss Deb to not give me her daughter at the same exact time, by the way. And he's calling law enforcement all day and night long. Is he interested in brown girls? Is he interested in brown girls? So basically what ended up happening was, out of his extreme greed, he got yelled at by Miss Deb, who told him pretty much, like, it's not appropriate for a married man to be calling a married woman like that, especially when you have a 5-foot-long beard like that. So, which was true, and which was the right thing to tell him. So basically, yeah. In 2025, my dad, the greedy framer, got the message pretty quickly that I was not in the mood for making any deals based on any illegal assurance of money, and I knew that's what he wanted, since basically, yeah, by then I knew that's exactly what anyone wanted. So till June 28th, this is he tried blackmailing me, calling people all day and night long. After I won my case on June 28, 2025, last year, he started begging me all day and night long, telling my sister that he cries on his free time, thinking about me, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyways, first let me recap a little bit all the lies he's made. Then I'm going to go through this new theory that he's making, that if I was with him, then I would, like, I didn't commit a crime because I was with him. When, in fact, facts and evidence show otherwise, that I was never with him. I was with my mother, and before I even went overseas, when I didn't live with him overseas, never did. Even then I was living with my mother, and over here I lived with my mother for years before I went overseas anyways. So basically, the first lie, it was November 20th. What happened was, all year long after June 28th, my dad, the greedy framer, thought he was very slick. He could try to contact me and try to sweet talk me into going to his house. He only wanted the Brain Savant money, and that was it. And so he tried all year long after June 28th, over and over and over and over again. November 1st, he tries again. He's like, ask Hassan, does he want to go with me? He called my sister and asked her that, and I was just like, no, I don't want to go with him. Why would I want to go with him? What is wrong with this man? Like, this year he's been acting really psycho, and the only reason he was acting psycho in the entire year of 2025 was because he thought my Brain Savant was getting freed and he wasn't going to get any money out of it. So after he got rejected again on November 1st, 2025 by me, and I said straight out, I was like, look, it's not happening. I'm not picking up. I know exactly what you want. If I would even pick up his call, he would first be like, can you come over to my house? Can you go with me? I'm going to this place. You want to go with me? And if I would say no, he'd be like, okay, well then, do you want to come over to my house? do you want to come over to my house? Even though in 2022, when I was asking him if I could go to his house, he was yelling and screaming on the phone, and people had to convince him, like, you said you're going to let him go to your house, so now you have to, sort of thing. And now in 2025, this is the case. Basically, obviously, he knew about the Brain Savant money, and I knew exactly what he was going to ask. Come over to my house, come over to my house, come over to my house. Come over to my house. So basically, November 1st, I ignored his call again. He requested my sister to go somewhere with him. I was like, I'm not even talking to him on the phone. Why would I go anywhere with him? So basically, he got really angry and he told all his sisters. Basically, he doesn't even work anymore. He used to work for actual licensed doctors. He never became one because he never gave his board exams. And so all he did was sit at home and get his gambling thrill from calling me all day, night long. So November 1st, 2025, he asked my sister, he's like, ask Hassan, does he want to go with me? And so obviously I said no. I was like, no, I'm good. Thank you very much for asking all year long, annoying the living heck out of me. I said heck out of me. And so, yeah. And so, he told all his sisters, his framer sisters, like, all of you guys go to court, make sure his Brain Savant doesn't get freed. He's like, if I don't get the money, no one else does either. And so basically, yeah. And so November 20th was no surprise. November 14th, law enforcement did a Brain Savant test in Moscow, Russia. Not only did they find out that I have instantaneous photographic memory, innovation, and focusing, but that I also, my Brain Savant was extremely rare due to the fact that my powers increased over time, regardless of them locking it up after July 1st, 2023, so that I couldn't stare in textbooks anymore. My powers still increased over time, which made it extremely scary for them. And extremely rare Brain Savant. I was like a piece of diamond, like never seen in this world. Well, anyways, I was pretty happy. Well, actually, you know what? There was no way for me to know what the result of the artificial intelligence report said, first of all, but I knew that they just found that out on November 14th. They found out that my powers increased over time nonetheless, mainly, and I knew about it confirmed because on June 5th, 2025, I was parking my car and they like arguing about it, and even though they know what the truth is, they'd be like, he just has a lot of muscle memory, and the other guy in law enforcement would be like, no, I'm pretty sure that's a Brain Savant. No, he just has a lot of muscle memory. And so, and then they would just say, all right, fine. Would turn it off for 5 seconds when he's parking his car. He can't take out a textbook while he's parking his car. Turn it on for 5 seconds. If it turns on like a jet engine, it's a Brain Savant. If he needs to practice it for like 30 minutes, then it's muscle memory, because muscle memory has to be exercised. So I was parking my car on June 5th, 2025, and like literally my Brain Savant turned on. It was like zing. It was like a jet engine, but like for 5 seconds. So they knew it was a Brain Savant. The only thing was that in those 5 seconds, I knew, since it's my brain, that my powers increased over time, and I knew on November 14, 2025. Well, they found out. Finally, law enforcement found out. So basically, after November 14, obviously these people's envy is raging, and at this time, when I went into the hotel lobby in Moscow, Russia, instead of that good-looking Russian girl who would literally be there at the lobby, like there was this one Russian girl at the lobby, like she just wouldn't let me go. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, like it was just like, you sit at the hotel lobby, you just want to stare at people like coming and going. It's like a nice little cafe scene, you know. You're just sipping on your coffee and you're just looking at people coming and going. There was just one Russian girl, she would just pretend to be talking on the phone, and she'd just come right in front of me out of nowhere, and it was like so awkward. One time I had to change my seat. I was like, lady, if you want my number, you could just have it. You don't have to do this drama in front of everyone. Well, anyways, what ended up happening was, after November 20th, obviously, the Russian girl was gone, and here comes the Russian security man who was just staring at me. Like, he just looked at me, he's like, we're watching you, kid. And I just looked at him back, like, I know what happened. You don't know what happened, okay? Let's just leave it there. Let me just look at people coming and going. Well, it was like a bittersweet moment, you know? The Russian girl was gone, so I could look at people coming and going without the awkwardness of people, like a girl standing right in front of my face, like literally just standing there and looking really awkward. Like, why is that guy sitting right behind a girl standing? It looked a little weird because it looked like I came after her, and I was sitting there after she got there so I could like stare at her or something. But in fact, it was the exact opposite. I would be there from before and she would literally just come right in front of me. And so, yeah, so like after November 20th, it was like the totally different scenario setting. It was like Russian girl's gone. Here comes the Russian security guard. And he's just like looking at me like, I'm watching you, kid. And I'm just like looking back at him. Like literally, you don't know what this story is about. It's all about money. That's all there is to it. So my dad, the greedy framer, basically what he did was he begged his framer sisters and law enforcement to fabricate a false testimony against me that was made against me on November 20th, where the crime and setting did not even exist, and law enforcement was fully in on it before I even went to Russia. Law enforcement fully knew that there was something being fabricated against me. And in their evilness, they were hoping that they would not get caught. So the person that the government put in there to fabricate, though, was a government informant and not one of the corrupt law enforcement people who wanted me framed. So basically, they got caught. But before they got caught, I literally thought I was going to die. They were using so much mental torture on me. I thought I was going to die and no one would ever find out what the real story was, which was all about money and nothing else. It was all about my brain savant and nothing else. And if anyone wants to argue against this, there are only two ways of arguing. One is there's at least seven brain savant tests done where artificial intelligence did not lie about me, and nor am I psychic enough to predict what the reports say. That's one way of disproving it, the monetary potential of my brain savant. The other way, obviously, is doing a 30-minute brain savant test where you let it go for 30 minutes. There's no excuse for not doing it, since even everyone in Moscow, Russia, knew about the November 14 test. Literally right after they did it, like November 15, I was at a Spear Bank in Moscow, Russia, and I remember everyone looking at me like an alien creature just walked into the door at the bank. So basically, yeah. And I literally thought that I was gonna like literally die from this mental torture after November 20th. They wanted me dead basically out of extreme envy. But it was pretty cool. Between November 14th and November 20th, everyone in Moscow, Russia knew about my brain savant and everything. And I would watch like live shows and they would talk about Alexander Rybak and they'd be like pointing their finger out. It was really cool. I liked it. But after November 20th, obviously everything changed and they thought I was a criminal. Well, they didn't know the least of it. I really thought that I was going to die from all the mental torture. They just wanted me dead so that no one could get the money that they couldn't get. So basically, yeah, and they didn't want to do a brain savant test, and they were also scared that Russian government or someone else might turn it off, giving me a 30-minute test, thereby revealing exactly what it was that they were hiding. They didn't care about revealing it since they revealed it in their 1-minute test on November 14 anyways. They cared about their sex schemes that they run with these girls, and they thought that if the girl saw in 30-minute time period what I have, the powers that artificial intelligence said I have, and I'm not psychic enough to read that report without actually getting it, unless if I was telling the truth about my brain savant being a triple savant and powers increasing over time. They were scared that if the Russian government or someone else might pull a prank on them, turn it off for 30 minutes, then the power on their sex schemes would go from them to me, because the girls would see it performing out in the open, and it would be a totally different scenario after that. There's no arguing after that. They're not going to be like, you know those eyes of yours? They lie. Everything it saw, it was all I. He wasn't Kim Peek Rain Man for 30 minutes. Well, anyways, December 10th comes along and I am Kim Peek Rain Man. We know this for a fact, and artificial intelligence confirmed it due to the fact that they had girls following me around. This one girl they had follow me around December 10th. As soon as the brain savant test result comes out, she hit the back of my car and I ended up in the emergency room. So yeah, basically, yeah, that is what happened. So basically, so basically what ended up happening was my dad, the greedy framer, had November 20th fabricated against me because I rejected him on November 1st and he didn't think he was going to get any of the money. He knew I knew exactly what he wanted. Then December 29, 2025, when he's kicked out of the witness stand at 1:27 p.m., he goes right for the money. He asked law enforcement to put up RIA money transfer ads on my YouTube to try to check to see how I respond. Am I willing to give him any of the money now that he saw that my brain savant was going to get freed due to there not being anyone else fabricating false testimonies against me? He thought he was the only one. Obviously he was, and even right now he is. So basically, yeah. Then he's like, he begs the court all day and night long. He's like, please let me narrate. And the courts are like, fine, just go ahead and narrate. Now, the courts are not stupid. The government was not born yesterday. My dad, the greedy framer, and his framer sisters think that the government and the courts were basically born yesterday. So they had all these lies planned out. Well, guess what? The government was like one step ahead of them. They're not going to let someone make a fool of their national security and make lies upon someone using national security for their own private interest to literally frame me, and then use me being framed to use law enforcement to literally murder me so that my mother could not get any of the brain savant money that he knew he couldn't get. The government was always one step ahead of him. So they did let him narrate, but they wanted to know what he wanted to narrate. So when my dad, the greedy framer, got his second chance after November 20th, and he was kicked out on December 29th, 2025 at 1:27 p.m., I know the exact time because at that time he started asking me for money right away. Imagine a guy who's been arguing all year long that he doesn't think there's any money involved. He's not doing anything for any money. The moment he gets kicked out of the witness stand, he runs right for the money. He's like, he calls law enforcement. He's like, send him the money transfer ad. See if he gives me any of the money or not. He goes right for the money on December 29th, 1:27 p.m. December 29th, 2025 at 1:27 p.m. He goes right for the money right when he's kicked out of the witness stand. The entire year of 2025, he's saying, there's no money. There's brain savant doesn't exist. And right when he's kicked out of the witness stand, he goes right for the money. What does that tell you? He was lying the entire year. Well, now he's given his second chance. He's allowed to narrate. And this time he goes, I know November 20th was false. It was a lie against him. I don't know what happened. This time I'm telling the truth. Hassan committed the crime. My framer sister saw it. This is how he committed it. He did this. He went over there and my sister witnessed him commit this crime. This time, he's lying again. Every single lie he's making this time, the government informant was already told by Ibrahim's envious mother, my dad, the greedy framer's sister, Ibrahim's envious mother, that they had more lies planned. Basically, she told the government informant that now that we're telling him that we're framers, might as well tell him the entire story. They told the government informant, basically Ibrahim's envious mother, they had nothing on me. Everything they had was a lie, and they wanted help with the further lies they were going to make. She told the government informant that after November 20th, they had subsequent lies planned out that they were going to make against me just to make sure that my brain savant money that they knew they couldn't get, no one else could get either, only out of extreme envy, so that my brain savant could not get freed. Now, the thing about it is the government informant was told about all the subsequent lies that were planned after November 20th. At this time, they didn't know that there was a government informant. They were only told about this later on. Basically, I broke the news. Well, anyways, what ended up happening was the government informant basically he took out everything from them, all the subsequent lies they had. Ibrahim's envious mother told the government informant everything, and the government informant basically knew about all the lies that they had. And so my dad, the greedy framer, is making one lie after another after he's allowed to narrate in the trial against me again. This is the second attempt to try to frame me, only to try to frame me. Then my brain savant would get locked up, and then law enforcement would find an excuse to try to use so much severe mental torture drugs on me so that they would be able to murder me or get me to jump off the cliff. So basically what happened is my dad's narrating for the second time. The courts get sick and tired of him narrating very aggressive, like, this is how Hassan committed the crime. My framer sister saw him commit it. She witnessed him, like this and that, blah, blah, blah. So basically February 10th, 2026, the courts get sick and tired of it. They're like, look, Mr. Ansar, we know you're lying. How we know we can't tell you? Basically, they were told by the government informant in detail all the lies that they had planned out for after November 20th, and Ibrahim's envious mother even told the government informant that they had nothing on me except for lies, and she wanted help with more lies even after November 20th. The government informant was probably just like, man, it's Christmas time, but I get gifts from them too, because obviously his work was done. She told him everything, all the lies that she had, how she wanted it exaggerated, everything. So basically, yeah, she gave him everything. So February 10th, my dad, the greedy framer, is told the courts, tell him, Mr. Ansar, we know you're lying. How we know we can't tell you, but we know you're lying. Basically, the government informant was told, he's like, what? You know I'm lying. And so February 11th, after midnight, he starts texting me and sending me these things. I'll tell you exactly what. So February 11th, 12:22 a.m., literally, I get a text after I'm done, like, typing up all day long on February 10th, like journals and journals against him about how he's lying, he's all about money, me telling the courts, like, look, right now it's February 10th, but 8 days ago on February 2nd, he forced me to call him. When I did, he was sweet talking to me the entire time. Then he hung up and he went straight for calling the court in his rage of anger, even though he was sweet talking me the entire time. The only reason was money. It was money. He knows about the brain savant potential. There's a lot of money involved. You don't know the least of it. And I tried to tell the courts that on February 10th, and the courts, I just felt like they weren't believing me. So February 10th, the courts pretty much tell my dad, the greedy framer, they're like, Mr. Insider, we know you're lying. You're lying. We know you're lying. How we know we can't tell you? And February 11th, literally, if 22 minutes past midnight, I get a text from him. It says, so nice to hear from you after so long. And I read my phone, and I'm watching TV. I'm like, huh, so that's what happened. And I just put my phone down. I go back to watching TV. Obviously, he got caught with the subsequent lies because his framer sister told the government informant all of them. And I was thinking the entire time, like, she had to tell him the lies because you get a free car mechanic to come work on your car. Like, that's how, like, brown people are, you know? They'll just be like, free? Well, then I'm going to get all my stuff fixed. So basically, they gave the car mechanic, the government informant, all their problems in the car. They're like, we've got this lie, this lie, this lie, this lie, this lie. All of these lies, you're going to help us fabricate all of them. Exaggerate every single lie we've got. So basically gave the government informant everything they had. February 11th, I'm getting a text 22 minutes past midnight by a psychopath whom I've been arguing in court the entire day of February time. This man is lying. He's lying. He's lying. He's lying. He doesn't want my mother to get all the brain savant money. I have an extremely rare and profitable brain savant. Tell law enforcement to let it go for 30 minutes. You'll see it for yourself. And the courts, I thought that the courts are not believing me at nighttime. Like, finally watching my TV, I'm like, darn it, man. Like, they didn't believe me. And 22 minutes past midnight on February 11th, I get a Christmas present, and it's a text from him. It says, so nice to hear from you after so long. You got to remember, it's like 22 minutes past midnight. I'm just like, so that's what happened. And so I just put my phone down. I'm like excited watching TV. I knew what happened. Obviously, she confessed to the government informant. I was thinking she did. Like, brown people get free stuff, free service, and they're not going to exploit it. Yeah, right. So basically, at 3:17 a.m., he sends me a porn star's picture named Sunny Leone with his sister Fur's name on it. I was just like, way to make it obvious. I already knew what had happened. And then 3:56 a.m. he sends me, yeah, Ibrahim's ugly. I don't know how to say this one. 3:56 a.m. Ibrahim's mother. Yes, the man had gone crazy over money. It's basically, he wanted money in any way, shape, or form. My dad, the greedy framer, is told at that night, like, Mr. Ansar, sending a porn star's picture with your sister's name on it is an open advertisement for incest. It didn't affect him at all. March 7, 2026, he sends me that same porn star's picture with Fur, the greedy framer's name on it 3 times, and then 3 days afterwards, March 10, he sends me a sexually explicit picture of a woman resembling his sister Afreen. On that day, March 10, every single day afterwards, his big, fat, ugly old sisters, he wanted me to commit incest with them in exchange for illegal assurance of money, and he was already sending me price tags in the millions of euros, not dollars, euros all day, night long. And if you want conformity, just ask law enforcement. So basically, that's what happened. First time he lies, November 20th, he gets his framer sisters and law enforcement to lie. He begs them to do so. He's caught December 29th, 2025 at 1:27 p.m. He goes straight for the money. And the second time he lies, February 10th, he gets caught. He goes straight for the money. February 11th, incest, blackmail price tags, then incest again March 7th, and blackmail price tags, then incest again March 10th, blackmail price tags. So there's no question about it. The third time he lies, he goes back to court early April 2026. He makes more lies, and then he is basically caught again with facts and evidence retrieved from the phone conversations. Now, fourth time he lies. Right now, July, Ibrahim, the greedy framer, was trying to lie for him, and they got caught again, which is why Ibrahim was even trying to send me blackmail price tags again, which he's still doing right now in the millions of dollars coming from Florida, like how he always has. So basically, yeah. After my dad, the greedy framer, is done lying and fabricating so many times, now the only thing he has got is to try to exploit and say that I ever lived with him, or that the only reason I didn't commit any crimes or do anything bad was because I lived with him. The thing that the courts have to understand is the fact that in the case where the facts and evidences are not missing, You do not have to go by people's opinions or arguments. The facts and evidences will show that I have literally never lived in the same country as my dad, the greedy framer, ever in my life, never spoken to him on the phone, making it literally impossible for him to have had any effect on my life whatsoever. Okay, so yeah. So basically, this argument cannot stay since I have literally never lived with him my entire life. Basically, since childhood till forever, I've only lived with my mother. And this thing where he's going to try to claim that I was going to commit some sort of a crime or this and that is just unarguable. It doesn't stay since there's absolutely no record of me ever attempting to or trying to commit any crimes whatsoever. In fact, even when I was adult supervised by one of law enforcement's own BFFs like Uncle Joey, nothing that Uncle Joey or any of law enforcement's BFFs that they ran sex schemes or money fraud with could have said anything that could have been illegal in any way, shape, or form, harmed anyone, done anything to anyone, any way, shape, or form. I've only met my dad about 3 times my entire life, out of which one was in 2011, one was 2022, and maybe once or twice in when I was overseas. So basically, yeah. Only about 3 times or so. So basically, one of those 3 times was 2011. So basically, in the year 2011, my dad, the greedy framer, was calling people in the masses to his house to give them sermons on joining terror groups and committing mass murder against innocent human beings every single day. That is a crime. You're getting people to join terror groups. Around 50 people were given these sermons every single night from his house. Out of those 50 people, not one person ever disagreed with him, ever, which means that every single one of those 50 people were agreeing with him. How many of those people were joining terror groups? We don't know. How many of those people have committed mass murder after joining terror groups? We don't know. The evidences, I will give you explicit details of all the evidences. For one, you will have... For one, you're gonna have law enforcement tipping him off before the circus ends. Okay, basically there was a circus, there was 100% a circus, and before the circus ends, basically law enforcement had to tip him off. That's number one evidence right there. They tipped him off either themselves or through one of his framer sisters. The other evidence is the fact that there was a government informant involved. Okay, the government informant was basically put there, and he was the only person who was disagreeing with him, and the courts will easily find the government informant as well. The third evidence is the fact that the circus ended abruptly, very suddenly, all of a sudden, one day, letting me know that either if I'm psychic is how I know, or if there was a circus and it ended abruptly one day, all of a sudden, then obviously I know for a fact that there was a circus, or else I wouldn't be able to predict the fact that he was tipped off, obviously, unless if the circus suddenly ended one day. Either someone told me he was tipped off, or he was obviously tipped off. So now these are 3 pieces of evidences, and the fourth one obviously would be that after 2011, my dad would definitely go and join all kinds of patriotic groups in Ireland, only to try to show the Irish government that he was not encouraging people to join terror groups to mass murder people in Ireland, but in other countries. Clearly showing from facts and evidences that he was not selling ice cream in 2011, due to which a government informant had to be put there, and that he knew he had the guilt in there. A man who's been living in that country for more than 40 years never joins one patriotic group. As soon as 2011 comes along, he's tipped off, the circus ends, he's told by either law enforcement or one of his framer sisters indirectly to stop this. A government informant is placed inside of his house, and he sees the government informant, and now suddenly when the circus is all gone, he starts joining patriotic groups in Ireland, just to show that he was not encouraging people to join terror groups to mass murder people in Ireland, since he has a lot of patriotism with them. For 40 years, he never joined a single patriotic group. As soon as 2011 comes along, he joins 50 of them. What are the chances of that? Obviously, the facts and evidences will be there. The government informant's going to be there. excuse me, the government informant's going to be there, evidence of him being tipped off, either directly through law enforcement or indirectly through one of his sisters, or it's going to be there. Everything is going to be there, fully, completely, directly there. I could describe to you who the government informant was. He was sitting right next to my dad, the greedy framer, on the very last days, and he was trying to disagree with him, and he would continuously he was trying to disagree with my dad, the greedy framer, and my dad, the greedy framer, would he would try to abruptly interrupt him and stop him from doing so. But my dad, the greedy framer, would not listen. He would keep on going, saying that jihad is important and that they should basically join terror groups and mass murder innocent human beings. And that's what he was doing. That is a crime. That is something I witnessed, something that law enforcement witnessed, and law enforcement had to literally tip him off in order to, law enforcement literally had to tip him off in order to stop that circus. And the only reason I know that he was tipped off is due to the fact that there was a circus going on in his house every single night with around 50 people, and not one of those people ever disagreed with him, clearly showing from facts and evidence is that the only reason I know that he was tipped off is due to the fact that there was a circus in his house every single night where he was encouraging people to join terror groups, and it suddenly just stopped overnight one day. So basically, yeah, that is an example of what illegal activity is. That's an example of how people are encouraged to join terror groups. That's an example of how crimes are committed, Whereas nothing that any of law enforcement's BFFs, while they were adult supervising me, could have said anything around me while they were adult supervising me to have committed any crimes, harmed anyone, or done anything of that sort of nature that could have affected anyone's life whatsoever. That's what the facts and evidences will show. The other thing is, my mother was a single mother, so basically, she had no other choice. So she had already let law enforcement know when I was an 11-year-old child that she was going to have me adult supervised for a little time being, and that after that time was up, that she would never need me adult supervised by anyone at all, and that she was a good person who never said anything remotely considered bad her entire life. She's not a person who's stupid or low IQ or any of that sort of nature, since she paid for my things since I was a child while working at a fast food restaurant, and even when I was overseas, the facts and evidences will show that my mother used to work at a Food Line grocery store, and she wasn't a low IQ person or stupid or anything like that. She worked at a grocery store, Food Line grocery store. She earned money, and she paid for all my things when I was overseas. If my dad, the greedy framer, paid like $90 a month, that was only $90 a month, and it was only for a little while. I never lived with him, never talked to him on the phone. I basically lived with my mother the entire time, my entire life, and even when I was overseas, I've never lived with my dad, the greedy framer. He wasn't even in the same country, or talked to me on the phone, making it impossible for someone whom I had no contact with whatsoever, either on the phone or in person, to have had any effect on my life or environment whatsoever. And so when I was a child, I was adult supervised by one of law enforcement's own BFFs that law enforcement ran sex schemes with, like Uncle Joey's in-laws since 2001, or money fraud that was literally only stopped about 2 months ago. Yeah. So at that time, basically, there was nothing that anyone could have done. No other person could have adult supervised me, but nothing that anyone could have said had any effect or harm in anyone's life whatsoever. I was only a child. My mother had already gotten permission from law enforcement for me to have been there in the first place. So now, if I went back in time, there would not be any other option that my mother would have in the first place. It's not like she could put me in a daycare while working in a fast food restaurant. It's not like I could go back in time and start to earn money and give her that money so that she could put me in a daycare. Anyone willing to watch me for free was the person who would watch me for free, and it just so happened that they were all law enforcement's own BFFs, like Uncle Joey. There was no other option. There was. It's not like I'm gonna work as a child and earn money to give my mother so that she could put me in a daycare or something. Whereas as an adult, my mother used to pay for things in my pharmacy school, but for a while she couldn't do so, and I had to tutor people for food. I didn't even have food. She used to pay. My mother paid for my things all my entire life, and I didn't even have food, and law enforcement is a witness to this fact that I had to literally tutor people for food. And basically, what ended up happening was my mother was worried about me. She's like, "How are you going to get by without food at school?" So I told her one day, I just called her and I was like, "Look, I took care of it. Don't worry about it. I took care of it. I saw a kid. He looked like he really needed help getting tutored for pharmacology. I just went up to him and I was like, "Look, you look like someone who needs help in pharmacology." He's like, "Yeah, I'd do anything if someone could tutor me." I was like, "I'll tutor you. I just need food in exchange. I need, that's all I need. I don't want money. I want food." And I just told him straight out. He's like, "That's fine. You could come tutor me today if you want." This is pharmacology, so it was not a problem. So I just went over to his house after that and I tutored him pharmacology. So yeah, and I just called my mother and I was like, "Look, I took care of it. Don't worry about it. I took care of it. Okay, don't worry about it." So basically, yeah, that's how I took care of it as an adult for the problems that my mother had as a single mother, unable to pay for my things fully at one time while working at a Food Line grocery store. As a child, there was nothing I could do. Law enforcement BFFs like Uncle Joey that they've been running sex games with since 2001 with his in-laws were the only people. Uncle Joey, like the person that they provided top-notch protocol for at the November 2023 funeral, were the only people who could adult supervise me as a child. There was no other option, and my mother had already gotten permission from law enforcement for before I was even put there when I was an 11-year-old child. Now, the thing that the courts have to understand is the fact that I've never lived with my dad, the greedy framer. The facts and evidences will show that we never even lived in the same country. Never talked to him on the phone, making it impossible for him to have any influence on my life or environment whatsoever. In 2011, he was caught encouraging people to join terror groups. Whether he claims that he only did it for 1 year or 6 months or one day or this or that is a separate issue, but he was caught and he was tipped off. He was told to not do this anymore. He knew what he was doing was illegal, and he did join patriotic groups right afterwards to try to show the government over there that he wasn't trying to encourage people to mass murder people in that country itself. So basically, yes, the facts and evidences will show that this did in fact happen. So that being compared to my mother's entire life, from me being watched since I was an 11-year-old child till now, how many times has my mother even spoken of anything even remotely considered bad her entire life? Not even once. Absolutely zero. Is my mother a low IQ person or stupid? No. She's not. In fact, she worked at fast food restaurants my entire life to help raise me. She worked at a Food Line grocery store when I was in school to help pay for my things. She's always paid for all my things. And now that it's time for her to get the fruits of her labor, lifelong labor, by the way, everyone, including my dad, the greedy framer, obviously, is an obstacle in that way to try to make sure that my mother, my brain savant, could not get freed and she could not get any of the money. And I've showed you in the previous video that he's been asking me for forgiveness all day, night long, while trying to aggressively narrate and make false statements against me in this trial. So the first thing has been done. My dad, the greedy framer, and I, we never lived even in the same country, never talked to on the phone, making it impossible for someone whom I've never even lived with in the same country to have had any influence on my life whatsoever. Now, the other thing he might try to raise is if he didn't go overseas, then he would have been a criminal. Not true. My mother fulfilled her promise the moment I no longer needed adult supervision. Like how she said on February 15, 8:30 p.m., she was like, "Look, I only needed you adult supervised till you gain a slightest bit of mental maturity because I was scared that you might run out of the door alone as a child if I left you at home alone when I went to work at fast food restaurants or factories at night." So she said it clear and simple. I didn't adulterate a single word or sentence. Not anything as it happened when I was a child, not at all. Okay, that is exactly how it happened. She was scared that I might run out of the door if she left me at home alone as a child till a certain age, if when she would go work at fast food restaurants or factories at nighttime. So as soon as I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, she no longer needed me adult supervised anymore. After which time, I spent years with her before I went anywhere overseas or anything of that sort of nature. Those years that I spent with her was Uncle Joey or any of their law enforcement's BFFs, who law enforcement was committing money fraud with only about 2 months ago, or sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws still going on right now. Did any of these people ever say anything remotely considered bad around me after I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, living with my mother for years before I went overseas or anywhere else? No, they never did. Was I tipped off by anyone in law enforcement? No, because if I was tipped off, then everyone else would have been tipped off, but no one was tipped off by me. People were all tipped off by law enforcement. We know this from facts and evidences due to the fact that law enforcement are the people who basically were just running the money fraud with everyone only 2 months ago. And sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws right now continuing till this very day today. So facts and evidence is not that hard to see and find out that law enforcement is the one that literally tipped everyone off. So basically, we weren't the one tipping anyone off, since if we were, we would have tipped other people off. And after my mother no longer needed me adult supervised anymore, everything was the same. People like Uncle Joey, who said anything remotely considered bad, continued doing so. I just never saw them ever again. I never saw Uncle Joey ever again after I was a child. And if I ever did see anyone, they would no longer say anything bad around me anymore. There are various reasons why. One reason, obviously, is that when someone is there by force, due to their single mother's necessity, they are dependent on you. They're not gonna say anything to you, like, why did you say this or that? And their mother's not even there. Even though nothing that could be said would be a crime in the first place. Something around the lines of someone watching something, since the war occurred at that time, someone watching something on the news and saying that this is wrong, that the war is going on, or something like that. Anything of that sort of nature, no one would say that around a person who is no longer forced to be in your setting where they're dependent on you anymore. So even if I did see anyone anymore after I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, which was extremely rare, no one ever said anything you remotely considered bad around me ever again. First of all, the thing that has to be noted is, first point is, I've never lived with my dad, the Greedy Framer, my entire life, never even talked to him on the phone, making it impossible for someone whom I've never lived with or even talked to on the phone to have had any influence on my life whatsoever. The second point is the fact that if I was going to commit a crime and that I didn't commit because I went overseas or this or that, well, there were years before I went overseas, and between when I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity and went overseas, I lived with my mother the entire time for years after I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, and never did I ever attempt to try to talk about committing any crimes or do anything of that sort in nature whatsoever. Even before I gained the slightest bit of mental maturity, nothing that anyone could have said would be giving sermons to people in the masses, telling them to, encouraging them to join terror groups, which my dad, the Greedy Framer, was doing in 2011. No matter how much he tries to disagree to that, he was definitely doing it. If he wasn't doing it, there would be no way, there would be no reason for the government informant to be involved, for one. And second thing is, there's no reason for him to have to be tipped off. Why would someone tip someone off selling ice cream? It doesn't make any sense. He was encouraging people to go join terror groups in 2011. That is a fact. He wasn't joining, he wasn't selling ice cream. He was encouraging people to join terror groups in 2011. If he wasn't, the government, the law enforcement would not be forced to tip him off. It's that simple. I would not know that he's tipped off because there wouldn't be a circus that would suddenly disappear overnight. That's not possible. He was doing that. Forget encouraging people to join terror groups. How many times has my mother ever been heard saying anything you remotely considered bad her entire life since she was watching this? I was an 11-year-old child. Absolutely zero. Not once. Is she low IQ or stupid? No. She's worked at fast food restaurants her entire life, and worked at fast food restaurants her entire life, even worked at Food Line grocery stores to help pay for my school. I slept on the side of the street to get all 108 exams done for my overseas school, pharmacy school, with help from my mother while going back from her house all the time. Law enforcement is a witness to all of this. And so, yeah, she's not stupid or low IQ or anything of that sort of nature. She's worked hard for me my entire life. In fact, not only did she not ever say anything remotely considered bad about anyone ever, if I would ever ask her about anyone of any other faith, like Jewish person, Jewish girl marrying me, she would give me the nicest answer ever. She always welcomes people from other religions, races, and ethnicities into our house very welcomely. She's a very nice person, and it's also proven from facts and evidences from a brain scanner being used on my brain for years before I even knew about it on July 1st, 2023. So yeah, this thing is incomparable for what my dad, the Greedy Framer, was shown to have been doing. He was encouraging people to join terror groups in 2011. If he wasn't, the law enforcement would not have to tip him off. They're not going to go tip someone off about who's selling ice cream. They're not going to let anyone know that they're there. Something definitely was going on. That much is common sense. Okay, he was encouraging people to join terror groups in 2011, or else law enforcement would not have to tip him off. They're not going to show themselves up in someone's face that when they're supposed to be invisible, who's selling ice cream. They're not that stupid. Something definitely was going on, and it was going on to people in the masses every single day from his house, and he can't change his words right now, twisting my words. He can't do that anymore like he did in April. You know why? Because there were 50 people in his sermons every single day, and if he was giving sermon on jihad, as in fighting against your desires, that government informant would not be interrupting him or trying to twist his words like how he likes to say. So he was doing what I'm saying he was doing, and law enforcement knew exactly what he was doing, which is why they had to tip him off. Law enforcement, you got to remember, does not just tip people off like that. Obviously, they do it when they need someone. Sex schemes with Uncle Joey's in-laws, money fraud with other people. That's true. But you got to remember, when I was being adult supervised by law enforcement's BFFs, they didn't tip them off at that time. It wasn't until my mother removed me from that setting that they went and they tipped them off. Okay, so yeah, they don't like showing themselves. Well, it doesn't look like. They don't like showing themselves out in public. Well, they're not supposed to. They don't like. They wouldn't do it without a reason. Either they need help with sex schemes or money fraud, or the person was definitely doing something. And we know he was doing something since the government informant had to be put there in place. So he was definitely doing something. So yeah, so basically this entire theory that law enforcement is basically trying to use about the child narration, it doesn't make any sense, mainly due to the fact that so many of their false testimonies have been caught so far that so many of their false testimonies have been caught so far that this narration of saying that the only reason I didn't do anything wrong was because I went overseas or this or that, it does not make any sense, since they're only doing this due to they're not letting me talk. They're just using so many drugs on me. Give me 1 second.